Tansy had grown up in the company of gorillas at her parents' Rehabilitation Center. After 12 years, she returned to the center to reconnect with her cherished childhood companions. However, her joyous anticipation quickly became profound sorrow as she encountered a devastating tragedy. As a young child, Tansy Aspinall had the remarkable opportunity to grow up alongside gorillas, one of Earth's most powerful yet remarkably human-like species. Her parents owned a rehabilitation center where these animals found refuge for various reasons, some due to injuries, others because of losing their natural habitats. The facility's primary goal was to provide the gorillas with improved lives, rehabilitate them, ensure their happiness and well-being, and potentially reintroduce them into their native environments if feasible. The staff members, who had developed deep bonds with the gorillas under their care, were incredibly close to these majestic creatures. Even little Tansy, as the daughter of the facility's owners, began forming her own special relationships with these gentle giants. However, it should be noted that gorillas, despite their gentleness, could become dangerous if provoked. Such behavior was typically attributed to miscommunication between the staff and the animals. Yet Tansy's parents never hesitated to allow their young daughter to interact with the gorillas, as they understood the inherent risks. Despite their imposing size, gorillas are inherently caring animals. They recognized that little Tansy needed nurturing and protection, even though they understood that she was not one of them and did not belong to their group. Whenever Tansy was around, the gorillas displayed a remarkable sense of guardianship, forming a strong bond with the girl that made them appear almost human. One group of gorillas took Tansy under their wing during their temporary stay at the rehabilitation facility. They were in the process of being relocated, using the facility as a transitional place for rest and care. However, these intelligent and emotionally perceptive animals swiftly grew to love and care for the clumsy little girl who frequently found herself in their presence. They would sit by her side and engage in playful activities, creating a remarkable sight. Yet as time went on, the moment arrived when the troop of 10 gorillas had to continue their journey. They couldn't remain indefinitely in the facility, enjoying their time playing with Tansy, no matter how wonderful that would have been. The next phase of their journey involved transporting the gorillas to an island in the middle of a river. This island served as another temporary sanctuary on their back to the wild. Here, the gorillas had the opportunity to learn essential hunting skills and regain their natural behaviors, all while being shielded from any immediate danger. Tansy and her parents remained on the island, closely observing their progress, ensuring their successful adaptation and ability to thrive in their newfound natural environment. They spent several months on the island, but eventually the time came for the rehabilitated gorillas to venture into the vast jungle and begin their lives in their true habitat. It was an undeniably somber day as the gorillas bid their own unique farewells to Tansy and her parents. Despite the recent semi-wild existence, they had developed an even deeper bond with the family, particularly with the young girl. It was evident that they felt a sense of sadness in leaving her behind. Nonetheless, everyone understood it was for the best, both for the animals and as a cohesive group. With heavy hearts, the gorillas disappeared into the dense foliage, vanishing from sight. Hopes were held high that they would live long and content lives, embracing their instincts and thriving in their ancestral home. Years flew by, and Tansy blossomed into a beautiful, strong, independent woman. She received an excellent education and embarked on a career at the very foundation her parents had established. Her work involved assisting the next generation of gorillas in the rehabilitation journey, preparing them for the eventual release into the wild. However, even with time, Tansy still yearned to reunite with the original group of gorillas she had grown up with. She wondered if they were still alive, and if so, if they would recognize her. Numerous questions filled her mind, leading her to make a special request to her father, a joint trip to locate those gorillas. Thankfully, her father readily agreed, and they arranged a voyage to Gabon, where all the gorillas from the facility had been released over the course of many years. They both acknowledged that finding the specific gorillas amidst the vast expanse would be a formidable challenge. Two of the gorillas had forged stronger bonds with Tansy during her childhood, Degelta and Bims. These remarkable individuals possessed distinct markings, and Tansy remained certain that she would recognize them instantly if given a chance to see them again. The journey to the Gabon jungle stretched before them, seemingly as long and challenging as ever. Regardless of how often they had ventured deep into the wilderness to release gorillas and ensure their safety away from human contact, the trip never became quicker or easier. However, as they progressed, a sense of nervousness overwhelmed Tansy. It was an odd sensation, for she harbored no fear of the gorillas. After all, she had spent a lifetime alongside these animals. Instead, it felt akin to reuniting with long-lost friends or distant family members, people she wasn't sure would still hold affection for her or even recognize her. Nevertheless, despite the passing of 12 years, Tansy remained convinced that the gorillas would remember her. She hadn't undergone significant changes. As soon as their boat reached the land, Tansy and her father embarked on their quest to find the gorillas. They expected it would take several hours, if not more, to track them down. Against all odds, within a few minutes, they stumbled upon traces of the animals. Following these signs, they eventually arrived at a clearing. Before them stood a group of majestic gorillas. To their astonishment, among them were the familiar figures of Degelta and Bims. The encounter was even more extraordinary than they could have imagined. As soon as the gorillas caught sight of the newcomers, they charged towards them. Tansy and her father stood their ground, aware that fleeing would be perceived as a sign of weakness. However, Degelta and Bims embraced Tansy tightly instead of attacking, studying her fondly. It was evident that they remembered her. Overwhelmed by the reunion, tears streamed down Tansy's face. She hadn't anticipated becoming so emotional. Tansy and her father remained among the gorillas, including Degelta and Bims, for the following days. They were joined by other rehabilitated animals released into the wild. While not as amicable as the two gorillas Tansy had known as a child, they tolerated the presence of humans. Eventually, the time came for Tansy and her father to bid farewell and return to the Rehabilitation Center. The gorillas displayed reluctance to part ways, clinging to Tansy and her father, clearly devastated that the joyful visit had ended. However, a few days after their return, Tansy received devastating news. Degelta and Bims had been killed. Distraught, she couldn't bear the thought of her friends meeting such a fate alone in the wilderness. Moreover, she struggled to comprehend how it occurred. Perhaps a leopard had attacked them. Leopards possessed immense power and were among the few animals capable of overpowering a gorilla. But several gorillas falling victim to a single leopard seemed unlikely, leaving Tansy with lingering questions and a heavy heart. Speculations arose among certain individuals, suggesting that poachers or intruders were responsible for the gorillas' tragic deaths, undermining Tansy's family's arduous efforts. However, Tansy and her father eventually uncovered the truth. It wasn't leopards or poachers, but rather another gorilla within the reserve. Ground teams in Gabon conducted an investigation, revealing that the killer was a gorilla named Bamanga, a troubled silverback who had been at the facility years prior. But Bamanga had come from a background of violence and had always struggled to integrate with the group. The gorilla's mental well-being had been severely impacted by his cruel captivity and miserable conditions. In a moment of rage and chaos, Bamanga had taken the lives of both Degelta and Bims. Fortunately, Bamanga was located, tranquilized, and removed from the area. This tragic incident forced Tansy, her family, and the gorilla facility to re-evaluate their processes and procedures. Like humans, not every gorilla can coexist peacefully with others, particularly if they have suffered profound mental and physical trauma. They can become strained and eventually reach a breaking point as people are pushed beyond their limits. From that day forward, the focus shifted towards prioritizing the animal's mental health and their care. Though the loss of Degelta and Bims was deeply saddening, Tansy found solace in knowing that they had spent their final days in happiness and contentment, just as she had experienced when she was with them. That knowledge provided the strength she needed to carry on, determined to continue caring for and rehabilitating gorillas.